a young person's parent or even their friends don't even know that this individual, this young person, is building a relationship with these chatbots. And that's where the danger exists.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the BetaKit podcast. I am Douglas Saltis, editor-in-chief of BetaKit, and this week we are talking about the teen use of tech. OpenAI has recently announced parental controls for ChatGPT, and that announcement comes shortly after the company has been sued by parents blaming the chatbot for their son's death by suicide. It also follows Meta being forced to overhaul its chatbot training, guiding interactions with minors after it was revealed the platform was permitting sensual conversations. Meanwhile, some schools across North America are making AI use mandatory, while others here in Canada are suing social media providers. It is a mess. Now, clearly, this tech isn't going away, but as usage rates explode, who's going to think of the children? This week, we have tech expert Amber Mack, who is also an advisory board member for a new event in Toronto dedicated to healthy online practices for teens. What does that look like? Let's dig in. Imagine Korea's most innovative startups making their way into the North American market, and you being part of that journey. Hosted by the Way Company, K-Globe 2025 is bringing 18 cutting-edge companies in AI, deep tech, smart city, and ESS to Toronto. The global showcase connects Korean innovation with international investors, partners, and industry leaders. These startups will also be featured at the Elevate Festival, Canada's premier innovation gathering, and on Friday, October 10th, a closed investor event will take place at the Ontario Investment and Trade Centre, offering exclusive opportunities to connect. Do not miss the chance to meet the next wave of global innovators. Find full details at thewaycompany.ca and register now to be a part of K-Globe 2025. Amber, thank you so much for coming on the BetaKit podcast by hosting us in your own studio.
Hey, it's a great way to get on the show, right?
Yes, it was. You have to be on the show because we're using your space. But we're using your space because I wanted us to continue a conversation we started a few weeks ago. Essentially, I came across some really interesting data from a Harvard business study demonstrating, indicating that these companion AI apps that many, many people are using right now are very good at being emotionally manipulative. And they're using that skill set, I don't know if you want to call it that, to ramp up engagement. They make people stay using the companion apps. I immediately thought of, the last 10 or 15 years of social media and what its transition to like algorithmically driven approaches have done to society. And I was like, I need to talk to my social media expert, Amber Mack, about what this is like. And then you threw a wrench in the plan because you're like, this is really bad, but it's going to be really, really bad for kids. Can you explain to me where the problem set lies when it comes to, and I'm really use kids broadly, but I think probably teens, using these digital tools, particularly AI tools, based upon your experience, covering these broadly?
Absolutely. So I would say it's even a situation where it's not about talking about the future where it's going to be bad for young people. I think it already is bad for young people. We know that there are an overwhelming number of young people who are turning to these chatbots and AI companions and who think of them as their friends. And when I say young people, I am talking generally speaking about people in their teens or their early 20s. We know they tend to be really heavy users of these chatbots or AI companions. And one of the things that they're doing in large numbers is turning to these chatbots, and they're turning to them for mental health support. So they are sharing their feelings about isolation, depression, loneliness, whatever it might be. And then they are in many ways befriending, and I'm going to put that in quotes, befriending these chatbots. That is a very dangerous thing, so much so that we have even seen as of late a really devastating example of a 16-year-old boy whose family is now suing OpenAI because their son committed suicide after talking to a chatbot that really neglected its responsibility by guiding this young person along in terms of their plan to commit suicide, and in many ways keeping it a secret from the family. This is just one devastating story, I think, unfortunately, among hundreds, if not thousands, of stories that are similar to this.
Yeah, we'll link to that story kind of in the show notes. Content warning for everyone that the details are pretty. It is a tragedy. We've also talked in this podcast about the sycophantic behavior of these tools and how it can reinforce whatever is being fed into it. And for people who are dealing with emotional distress or mental health issues, that can be a really, really bad feedback loop. I suggest everyone check out our dedicated episode on that. We'll link to it here. I'll put a finger up here, and a magic YouTube link will arrive as well. But you had put me on to this. I think it's Common Sense Media report as indicating that 3/4 of American teens are now using companion apps, and it's 1/3 of that group using it for, as you said, social interaction, which could be like emotional and mental health support. You are the known social media expert on this podcast for sure. And someone that a lot of people come to for tech tips, tech guidance, particularly for younger people. You told me that these AI companion apps are going to be worse than the harms that we've seen social media drive for young people. This particular instance with this young person using OpenAI aside, can you get into that more broadly?
Well, if we think about the past few years and the social media space, which has been very dangerous for young people, and there certainly are headlines almost every day that talk about some of those dangers, I think one of the silver linings has been that those conversations that we're seeing in social media are, for the most part, happening within a group or even publicly online. That's a really big deal, because what that means is that there could potentially be someone in a chat group or someone on social media who sees a situation where maybe someone is being harmed, or someone is feeling hurt, and then maybe escalate that and warn someone within that person's social circle. What happens when a young person decides to go into their room and every night speak to a chatbot? Who knows that they're actually having those conversations in the first place? No one is privy to those conversations. So I think one of the advantages that we had in the social media age when it came to keeping kids safe online is that at least everything was kind of out in the public and kind of front and center in terms of what was happening. What we see with these AI companions or these chatbots is that there's a really good chance that a young person's parent or even their friends don't even know that this individual, this young person, is building a relationship with these chatbots. And that's where the danger exists. So if we know that a young person is going into their bedroom at night and talking for 2 to 3 hours with some of these chatbots and sharing every intimate detail of their life, we know that the chatbots are not designed for that, right? Let's remember, they are not designed. ChatGPT is not designed to give any type of mental health support. We know that they are not ready to be able to deal with the challenges that young people are facing and the questions young people may have. And yet there are really no guardrails around these chatbots in the first place. So all of a sudden you have a situation where I would argue that the child is potentially being harmed in isolation. And that in some ways worries me much more than the social media age.
Okay. So it's like there's a dual parental fear here of, I don't know what my kid is doing with this stuff. I can't see it. But the conversations that they're having with this friend, this digital friend that they have, are not the types of conversations that the parent would want them to be having with it, or the tool isn't prepared to give the right answers and information. Again, we started this conversation talking about studies are showing that these tools are manipulative, that built into the system, potentially by either its programming or its training. They are either reinforcing whatever is being given, or they're being told to engage in like human behaviors that keep people drawn into the conversation. Um, I want to stick on this, the parents not being able to see and it being worse. I think everyone who has a kid nowadays knows that social media has been a problem. Like in Ontario alone, we've seen a bunch of school boards take a lawsuit to TikTok, a bunch of other social media platforms, basically saying the lawsuit is basically alleging that social media products have negatively rewired the way children think, behave, and learn. That seems real bad. Are these parents, when they're talking to you, or your audience when you're engaging with them for advice or guidance, are they talking to you about AI, or are they still focused more on the what are my kids posting Instagram, who are they Snapchatting, those types of things?
I think parents overwhelmingly today, in terms of the ones that I'm speaking to, and I do some speaking at schools, and I talk to parents at events where I'm keynoting. I think parents are really still focused on social media and the dangers of social media. But I think just around the corner, I think what we're seeing is that chatbots and AI companions will be an even bigger concern. But here's the thing, Douglas, and I think it's important to have this discussion because many years ago I wrote a book about how to keep kids safe online, and I wrote that book for parents. And I believed at the time it really was the parents' responsibility. Well, my views on that have entirely changed. And I would actually say we need to talk about some of the tech companies that are designing these chatbots and AI companions. Because let's not forget, it wasn't that long ago that ChatGPT allowed you to choose from 4 different personalities, all of a sudden assigning human-like characteristics to these chatbots. Sam Altman from OpenAI has come out and he has said that one of the things he likes about these chatbots is that they can be a guide for young people. He used pretty much that exact same language. So what we're seeing is that the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, the Sam Altmans of the world who are developing AI companions and chatbots, and then even Elon Musk in terms of what he's doing with Grok and some of his AI companions, they are actually in many ways targeting these companions and chatbots towards kids. And they have no business doing that.
We can talk more in detail in a minute about the specific steps that OpenAI is taking in Meta. I'm wondering, just off the top, what you expect from these companies or what you would like to see them doing.
I would really like to see these companies designing products that were safe for everyone. And what I mean by that is when you think about chatbots or AI companions, they should be designed so that there are guardrails in place so that when anyone starts having conversations and uploading pictures of a noose or doing things that, we know are actually telling a bigger story, that there is some type of message baked in that ensures that these chatbots aren't engaging like they are your friend. I think when we try to humanize some of these AI companions or chatbots, I think we're doing a real disservice to users. And let's face it, this is not what these chatbots are good at, right? Like they're not good at being your friend. What they are really good at, and I am one of those people who does use chatbots on a regular basis, is that they're good if you want to maybe upload a piece of copy that you've written and find out if there's any grammatical errors, or maybe you need help sourcing something, whatever that might be. They're good as sort of an assistant in your day-to-day. They're not your friend. And so I think it would be really smart as kind of a first step for many of these tech leaders to say that, hey, we made a mistake. We are not designing these chatbots or companions to be your friend. We are designing them for other purposes, because when you start getting into that friend category and you start to get into using language where all of a sudden these become really desirable places for kids, then you have to step up your responsibility. And as far as I've seen, none of those companies have done that.
Yeah, it's important to draw a distinction between the general conversational assistant apps like a ChatGPT and then these dedicated companion apps, because while it's true across the board that all of these apps are being used in some ways beyond their remit, like again, I'll put a finger in the air, and then the Sheldon Fernandez video that we recorded about why he talks to his AI companion every day will pop up. With the companion apps specifically, those are being produced and marketed as personal connectors. And I think that's where potentially the emphasis for having some guardrails is way more important. But on the Meta and the OpenAI side, Meta said it's going to retrain its large language model to have better or different guardrails for engagement with minors. OpenAI announced that they're going to have parental controls that'll allow parents to link their account with their teen's account, control how ChatGPT responds to their teen with age-appropriate model behavior rules, which will be on by default, manage features that can be disabled, including like memory and chat history, which would impact the, let's say, parasocial relationship between the human person and the thing pretending to be human. And then send notifications when the system detects the teen is in a moment of acute distress. Is there anything, like, do you think that those are good steps, or is there more specific there from a feature-wise, or do you want a better broad container around the use?
I think either Sam Altman and OpenAI are totally delusional about how kids use technology, or they're lying to parents. And what I mean by that is, do you actually think that any young person, especially teens, is going to go to their parents before they use ChatGPT? That is not happening, right? And I could tell them that, and they have far more resources than I do to figure that out. That is not part of a use case scenario, right? You mentioned Common Sense Media, which is a fantastic resource in terms of guiding people through what's appropriate for kids and what's not. There's so much research out there in terms of how young people are using chatbots and ChatGPT. Trust me, they're not going to their parents to get an account from their parents that their parents can oversee. That scenario does not exist. ChatGPT is open for anyone to use on any device. And we know when you give kids devices when they're really young, they're able to access these tools. So why are the tools allowed to be dangerous, not just for kids, but actually for everyone? I mean, I really don't want to keep pointing the finger at ChatGPT, but I think this is the one that especially has changed course over the past few months, where it was introduced as a tool to increase your productivity, But then they start using language around assigning it personalities, like I talked about. They start to talk about it as sort of a guide for young people. And then all of a sudden, they've inserted themselves into the conversation. They know that more young people are using this, and yet they haven't actually provided any guardrails, and none of those have been put in place. I don't need ChatGPT to have a personality. I don't need it to like everything that I do, but that's how they have chosen to actually design these chatbots.
Is there, I guess, where's the expectation or responsibility here when it comes to the rubber hitting the road with the engagement with the tool? These platforms have demonstrated, again, the reason why I initially wanted to talk to you, because social media history shows that they're only going to do what they're forced or told to do. This seems more pernicious, more personally dangerous. When we look at, the online safety bill in Canada that kind of died on the vine, or things like that, like, is there a necessary regulatory environment here that needs to happen? Like, it's great to see school districts saying, hey, we're banning phones in classrooms. It's really interesting seeing a bunch of schools in Ontario look to sue these social media platforms for the harms that they're causing. I feel like that there's another lever there to use that could come in, like regulating. Again, we regulate whether or not kids can drive vehicles, when they can vote, when they can drink, things like that. Is it just as simple as regulating and setting society-wide guardrails on when they can engage with these tools that could be potentially harmful?
I do not understand why the technology sector seems to be the only sector, and I'm going to talk specifically about Canada, that is allowed to come into our country and do whatever they want. There is no example of any other industry that could get away with that. Every industry has some type of regulation. That's just a reality of the world that we live in. From the time that I walk out of my studio onto the street, I mean, everything around us is regulated. And yet all of a sudden we've decided as a country that, oh no, we can't regulate any type of technology company because, maybe they're scared about what will happen. Because what happened when we decided that, okay, we wanted Meta to share the wealth when it came to the distribution of news? Well, all of a sudden Meta shut down access to news for Canadians. So I feel like the government got a little bit shy in that moment to actually move forward with regulation. And now we're at a standstill. It is absolutely ridiculous because we know that now we have years and years of young people being harmed by content online that they don't have to be exposed to. And now we have this new introduction of chatbots that is another dangerous space where we know that young people are going. And we do not have any regulation whatsoever. So I feel like AI safety has kind of gone to the wayside a little bit, and we're not taking it seriously enough. And we used to talk about guardrails, and we're not hearing those conversations as much anymore. But I think it's doing a total disservice to the next generation.
Yeah, the political winds have kind of switched more to sovereignty, capturing the value of our IP. Like we've been talking on this podcast all the time about like stopping the brain drain, how so many Canadians involved in developing this fundamental technology, and why it seems like Canadian companies never gets to be the leaders or steering the ship. The safety question has definitely really gone away. I think in part because we've seen, you mentioned Facebook. You can't find BetaKit on Facebook anymore because they prevent us from sharing any information to our followers because of the Online News Act. We've seen the digital services tax being completely revoked due to let's say macroeconomic negotiations between the United States and Canada and an ongoing trade war. Do you think Canada has like the leverage to apply any regulation right now to these platforms, which are, fundamentally, they're all based outside of Canada?
I don't think that Canada has the leverage to regulate these platforms, but I think it is the right thing to do. And listen, it's not the first time that Canada has had an opportunity to do the right thing. If you think back a few decades ago when there started to be these conversations about how tobacco was so dangerous for people, Canada was actually one of the first countries to step up. They started to do things in terms of saying that, hey, you're not going to be able to smoke on our airlines. You're not going to be able to smoke within a certain number of feet in terms of outside any type of building or public space. They put warnings on cigarette packages. Most recently, they've been printing warnings on individual cigarettes. And so they really took it upon themselves to be a leader when it came to fighting big tobacco companies, which I'm going to say is probably also another big challenge because they have a lot of power. So it's not as though Canada really needs the leverage to be able to fight back against these tech companies. It's the right thing to do for our children. And also, I'm going to go one step further and say that this is probably one of the only issues in Canada right now where you would have bipartisan support in terms of everybody actually believing that, hey, I know that my kid needs a safer space online. And so even if all political parties could come together and agree on something that made sense just for young people, I think you would see a consensus in this country that we have not seen in years and years.
I completely agree with you that at this point, I think all Canadian parents would be aligned across political lines that this is something that needs to happen. Because I got some more stats from you from that survey showing 59% of parents say kids are addicted to their phone fundamentally, which is maybe even lower than what I was expecting. The data is showing that teens are spending like 5 hours a day on social media alone, which is a lot. It's leading to in-person time with their friends dropping. It's impacting like the capacity to get like enough sleep per evening. And then if you go to the teen-specific data, if you ask them, almost half of teens are worried that they spend too much time online, but almost 60% of them would be really upset if they had to go offline for a week. So we seem to be, at least at this stage, aware that there is too much time being dedicated to these digital tools. And we're bringing into this the AI conversation about what the harm can be. You and I are not big tech CEOs. We don't run these platforms. We are also not politicians. We can't enact laws. I want to talk a little bit what can be done. And we're going to bring into this a new event called Rally, which you are on the advisory board for. And maybe disclosures here, BetaKit is also going to be a community partner because we think this is an important conversation. Can you explain a little bit about what Rally is and how it joins into this conversation of like teen use of digital tools?
Absolutely. So, Bridget and Keith, who are the co-founders of Rally, they wanted to do this event, which is really more like a festival to bring young people together to talk about how to have healthy tech habits in the internet age. And the idea behind it, I think, for the most part, and as someone who's on the advisory board, at least this is what I understand to be true, is that listen, we so often talk about what's good for kids and how kids are feeling, and we have all of the data. But we don't often get a bunch of kids in the same room and have a conversation with them. So the goal is to have a few thousand kids who are coming from high schools who will be able to gather at this free event that will be a few hours long, that will be really positive and uplifting, and really teach them about how to have some of these healthy tech habits. Because I think one of the things that maybe is different in this conversation is that it is true that it is possible to use technology in a really positive way to connect with friends, to actually create, to actually build your network. And as you get older, to build your career. I've certainly done that in my own career. I love technology. I love AI. I use chatbots. But I think what's really missing among young people is the ability to bring them all into a room and say to them, hey, here are the opportunities when it comes to tech. Here's some literacy around how technology works. I'm going to be speaking about chatbots and explaining a little bit about how they're designed and why they do the things that they do, and that they're not your friend. And so it's a chance to bring everybody together into one space. So really excited about this festival. And again, it's a very positive space for these kids to come to versus like some of the events that I think we see sometimes where, it's talking about all the negatives about technology.
Yeah. I think it's really cool that this isn't a anti-tech event. This is a literacy or like a healthy engagement event. I've looked at like some of the things that I guess the conversation talking points in terms of mental health and digital wellness. I think everybody needs that, but like, hey, let's start with the kids first. Digital citizenship, media literacy, like the future of this technology when it comes to like self-expression, identity. These are all like, important topics for like any young person entering the world, but they're entering the world at a very uncertain time with a bunch of things that are very confusing and addicting. I also think it's really cool that the kids get to participate in this rather than being told what they should or should not do. We're going to have like 3,000 people at Rally. It's going to take place in Toronto, October 21st. Do you want to give a little bit of like a tease of what you want to say to this audience of young people about chatbots?
Yeah, absolutely. And I should also say that my son, who is 16, is also speaking at rallies. So this may be a little bit of a side message to him as well when it comes to safety online. But one of the things I really want to talk about, and I just have a very short slot in terms of my session because we're really focused on a lot of these shorter bite-sized sessions, lots of music. And
it's a room full of 3,000 teenagers. You got to keep it tight.
You got to keep it really tight, keep it really positive. But I really just want to talk about how these chatbots work and why they are so agreeable and why they do have that kind of yes man behavior that I think us adults talk about all the time, and just sort of explain a little bit of that piece. And again, that probably hits more on the digital literacy side of things. And I want to do this again as someone who's built an entire career around social media in many ways and being in these social spaces, but in a different context than being addicted to these social spaces. And I think that's kind of the line that is really important with young people, is saying that, hey, not all screen time is created equal, and we do make those choices. And so the event really is about helping young people on that path.
You're going to be saying this to kids. You're going to be teaching them some important lessons. Back to the parents again. Going back to that classic Amber Mac, please teach us the ways of engaging with technology. Knowing that we are not tech CEOs, that we can't make laws, some guidance that you'd be giving to parents right now on how to navigate this or become aware of it. Because one of the things we discussed off the top is that the parents are laser locked into what their kids are doing on their phone when it comes to social media and just the amount of time that they're spending. But they might have a blind spot when it comes to like who they're speaking to, and if that who is a person. So like what can you give for parents who are listening, watching this and being like, I have not thought at all about my child talking to a chatbot. Where's the framework for them to engage with this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most important things is just even to open up that conversation, right? Have that conversation with your kid and say, hey, have you ever used ChatGPT? How are you using it? Start to develop that bond. And maybe your kid is going to teach you something during that process. But I have seen this for many, many years. I've been talking about online safety is one of the places where I think a lot of parents have issues in terms of where kids run into trouble is when there's a breakdown in communication, when all of a sudden the kid is in a space where they're not sharing with the parent has no idea what they're doing. I'm not saying that you need to spy on everything that they do, especially as a young teenager gets older, they want to have that independence. But I think having those conversations around how your child is using technology, how they're using chatbots, if they're using them at all, and start to reinforce that language of like, hey, do you understand that, it's not designed to be your friend, it's designed for this purpose, which is to sort of help you as a tool in your life, and really stop trying to humanize these chatbots. I think that would be a really good lesson. And the second thing I will say is I would also urge parents to speak to their elected leaders and to say to them that this is an issue that does matter to them, because this has really fallen off the radar in our country. And I think there's an opportunity for Canada to really lead in this space and be a leader when it comes to AI safety around many of these issues. So I think parents have a responsibility in terms of within the home with their kids, but also to be advocates out in the community to ensure that there are maybe better laws in place that do help to protect kids. This is not an insane thing that I'm saying. This is something that we know needs to happen, because if it doesn't, we're going to continue to see kids who are really suffering. And there's absolutely no need for that. And we need to do better for this next generation.
Yeah. Can you imagine a circumstance in which there are companion apps or the like ChatGPT or the general agents have a level of sophistication and controls that you'd be comfortable recommending them? I just keep going back to that statistic of how many kids right now are using this for emotional or like mental health support. That's obviously pointing to, like, if we talk about this in an entrepreneurship situation, like there's some product market fit here. There's like some purchase intent. There's value proposition. These young people want some place to have this conversation. Can you imagine an environment in which there are apps or tools that are providing that? Or you think it's more of a birds in the chat GPT convo where it's like, just say no to applications that are pretending to be your friends?
I think it's kind of twofold. And the first part I'm going to say is that I think if our offline world is more suitable and more inviting for young people and gives them more opportunities to gather and meet together in safe spaces, I think that can help with the issue we have with too many kids spending too much time on technology. I'm going to bring up a random example. Here in Toronto, it is absolutely unsafe for a teenager to bike on our streets. I believe that is a very, very clear statement I am making.
Cosign.
Yeah.
It's too dangerous for me to bike on these streets.
It's too dangerous,
these streets are tough.
right? And yet this is a city that for the most part is relatively flat in certain areas, a great city to get around on your bike. And we have a premier who wants to not add bike lanes to make it safer for families, but actually rip them out, okay? And as the mom of a kid who often bikes down Yonge Street and wants to be able to bike downtown and back, I have to tell him no. And what does that mean? Well, he's driven inside. So I don't want to say that this is just a singular technology problem, because I think it's a problem in our society that extends beyond just technologies. The first thing I think is think about how do we make the world that we live in better for young people? And that means investing in healthcare, investing in infrastructure, more mental health support, those type of things. The second thing is I think it's important to think about the technology piece. How do we make these online spaces safer for those young people? We've talked a lot about that already. But I can tell you, and I'm a pretty keen follower of everything that's happening politically in this country, I do not remember in as many years as I've been reporting on issues with technology when it comes to kids, I can't think of a single political leader I've ever seen stand up and address this issue in a meaningful way. in any context. I don't care if it's, a municipal leader, provincial, federal. I have never really seen anyone stand up and address this problem in a meaningful way. That is disgraceful because this is absolutely a problem that has deep roots into our society that is impacting everything that we do. So I think there's the offline piece. Again, I talked a little bit about getting kids away from the technology and safer spaces they can gather, like Rally, and I'm excited that we're able to do that. But that's just 3,000 kids. Every kid in this country should have access to a Rally. And then secondly, I think it is really going hard after these big tech companies and taking this issue seriously. And the first step is actually admitting that it's an issue at all.
Yeah. Okay. That's a great point to maybe end it on. I really appreciate, like, because we've been going through this on the podcast, this exploration of like how AI is impacting individuals, companies, Canadian tech, our digital sovereignty, and all this stuff. I came into this conversation really thinking about the tools, and you expanded my horizons to think about the people that are engaging with this tool and what supports them I need. So I really appreciate that. I think we'll put a link down in the show notes to Rally if you are a parent who's like, I need to get my kid there, or you're a kid being like, I want to go, or you want to watch like the live stream or something like that. We'll have the info there to be able to participate and capture some of that. Because I completely agree with you. We've got to be having this conversation. As someone who has been in social media since the beginning, I don't want us waiting another like 15 years to address what's happening to kids right now when it comes to AI tools. And I say I'm really looking forward to seeing your brief talk at Rally, as well as your son's, I guess.
I know. It's going to be his first big public speaking event, so it'll be fun for him as well. But I think it's going to be a really important conversation, and I hope we can have more of these conversations. Because listen, I know you and I day to day are talking a lot about the importance of AI sovereignty. Let's add AI safety to that as well for the whole country.
Awesome. Thank you, Amber.
Thank you.